All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. And my guest joining me today, you might recognize her as a former winner of the challenge, but she also is a nutritional therapist and she does her own podcast called the Meathead Hippie Podcast. Miss Emily Schromm, how you doing?
Hey, I'm so good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to be chatting with you, and we got to tell the listeners what I just told you before the recording started, sort of about how the universe works, because for those who remember Emily's original debuting stint on MTV was with Real World DC, and one of her fellow castmates, Mike Manning, who I previously chatted with, we were just talking about how I went back and rewatched my thing with him, and it was paused on the part of him calling you guys twins. So it was kind of the universe telling me that I should probably make this thing happen.
Oh, and I told you how easy it was when you reached out about a podcast. It was a no-brainer because you said you had just interviewed Mike Manning, and I was like, well, then that's a yes for me. So he is totally my twin. We had such serendipitous, synchronistic journeys and even like pictures of us together. Our eyes are the same. And so we were like, wow, Real World brought us back together. We could have been brother and sister and like literally twins. So he's wonderful.
It really was so uncanny, like your archetypes, like because they do kind of they're smart with the way they cast. They kind of like pluck people from different perspectives and the outcomes of what they're kind of dealing with. But you two had like such similar paths, I feel like,
Yeah.
and like it was almost like parallel to each other. So that's pretty funny.
It was, and I think if I thought about it now that you said that, there's kind of the reflection of, he was still pretty religious and really in a place of figuring out how to use freedom of his sexuality in a religious context. And I had come from such a religious background that I was kind of anti all religion and was on the whole other pendulum swing. So Mike really did bring me back to center a little bit to recalibrate because I was very much on the other side of what religion had put me through. So yeah, that was interesting how they did that.
Was that environment? Because I remember I flipped on Paramount Plus the other day just to kind of get like a refresh. Was that like environment and you walking in there like obviously it's a culture shock, but from like two different perspectives. Like you're all like young 20-year-olds, so automatically it's already going to be a tough adjustment. But with like your upbringing, you alluded to the fact that like you were a little sheltered, if I'm correct. So a lot of like the partying scene and just living with strangers was kind of foreign to you.
You know what
Was
was,
Yeah.
yeah, the culture shock was more actually. Well, there's two things. I had a kind of lots of segments with the producer because I felt so constricted. I felt like I was back in a cult. So I struggled a lot with just being in that environment where you can't walk out of the door without telling someone. You can't make a phone call without telling someone. You have no access to Wi-Fi. So the restrictions of literally just living in this house and doing this production brought back so many triggers of being told what to do and not having my freedom. And so I was like a trapped bird and I had a lot of freakouts just in that alone. And then absolutely the other side of it of, I was very naive. I'm grateful for it, but very naive walking into the show because it just happened to be such an accident that I got on it, that there was nothing else I could say except it was divine timing and or divine intervention, like the universe, right? Like, okay, here I am. I have no idea what to expect. I have no expectations or presumptions because I hadn't even seen the show. And that kind of was really wonderful because it left me just me, but it also was like very naive. And I was like sucker punched, like, oh my God, this is not what I thought. This is so much more. And it was so intense, especially the aftermath. Watching yourself, seeing other people watch you, if you are 20 or if a lot of 40-year-olds are in the same boat as 12-year-olds or 20-year-olds, it doesn't matter what age, to put yourself in a position or situation where you have to reflect and really see who you are. It's a really hard thing to do, and then to also have critique or even positive feedback. It's a very bizarre situation. So
Yeah.
good, yeah, good and bad bring up a lot, and it expedites your self growth, but it's not without issues. It's not without some trials and tribulations, which definitely were a part of my journey during the show and then after the show as well.
Were you in like a full-blown cult prior to the show?
Oh, yes. I mean, you know, I watch documentaries like Going Clear, or I've seen, you know, you can watch a lot of Scientology documentaries, and there's things that could always be worse, you know, when you watch some of these shows. But the concept of having one person in control, usually a wealthy person, and then using fear as a way to keep people in a space, that was my entire upbringing. And so it's just a really interesting, you know, we lived in a cornfield, and
Wow.
we you know, certain things that, whether it's pop culture references or just in general movies, like I still am watching movies from the late 80s and 90s that people talk about, and I'm like, oh, I finally get it. Like, this is what they were, this is the jokes, you know. So there, but at the same time, you know, to be that sheltered, I'm very grateful. My parents, who they are, and also my sisters, so, you know, we ended up okay. But it's, there's a lot of people that don't end up okay. And yeah, it was a very much an example of the patriarchy and Bible Belt religion going wrong. You know, I was definitely a product of that for a while.
Yeah. And now, I mean, look at you. Your kind of journey that you're on currently, you're in like more of like a spiritual sort of finding of yourself through some of the things that you do, like through fitness, and you're very zen, I should say, these days. Like, can you attribute that to any one thing in particular, or did you just organically develop that over time, maybe through like hobbies?
What a great question. What you said, I think, is so the right word, which was, you know, I was on a journey of self, and I think I'm going to be on that journey until I leave this life, you know. So I think the best thing is when we choose to learn more about ourselves, or we choose to get uncomfortable so that we can grow a little bit, or we choose to challenge what we know to be true. Life, that's life. And I, even today as I'm driving, I'm going up to Canada, and I'm on my way to Portland, Oregon today. And somebody said, like, it's called life. It was a bumper sticker. It's called life. Start acting like it. And it was so aggressive, and kind of like I wouldn't ever have that on my car. But at the same time, it had a lot of truth to it, which is we spend so much of our time watching other people live their life, or wishing we were somebody else, or wishing we could do something. It drove me mad. And so after Real World, and after this huge insane change of scenery from Missouri, Bible Belt, you know, I was in college, I was going to study to be a veterinarian. I thought I had my life figured out, working with animals. That was it. Real World happened. I was working at Starbucks when the casting director came in, and I actually made a bad joke about the show and how I thought it was still, I thought it was like, this is crazy. Why would anybody want to do that? And he thought it was hilarious, which is how that ended up being my first interview. So getting onto the show was such a, again, an accident that felt like, okay, this is life opening up to me, and I need to say yes to it. And as soon as that happened, you know, everyone kind of has that initial, when you're growing up, or whenever you start saying yes to life. Like, there's a movie I love. Have you seen Yes Man with
Yeah.
Jim? I think that's the best example. It's just like, yes, just start saying yes. So as soon as that happened, I became very addicted to what can happen on the other side of the things that we don't know. And so after Real World, I moved to from Missouri to the mountains in Colorado. I actually started because I went to visit Mikey. We went snowboarding together, and I fell in love, wanted to learn how to snowboard. And then from there, it was just a lot of progression of, I want to get to know who I am, because we spend so much time running away from who we are. We run away for various reasons, but we don't really come back in. And so to really get to know oneself is just like the best, most exciting thing, because that's when we break through those fears and those barriers, and we just learn how to live in our fullest, biggest self. And so lots of things happened to get me there, but it's just been such a journey. It's been such a fun, wonderful journey of choosing to say yes, and choosing to make sure that I'm putting myself in situations where I thrive. I'm not just surviving and stressed and worried and anxious. It's like, I want to live in joy and have fun, and that's what we're here for. And so what I need to do always changes based on how I make sure that that's the end result.
Hmm. And that's really all you can do, is try to put yourself in those positions to not only just be a better version of yourself, but like experience life in just like its purest form. Like I think in current society, a lot of people are stuck up on like carrying themselves in the way of comparing to other people or what they don't have via social media, instead of just using the resources around you, you know?
Yes, and also just always coming back to like, how do I feel content in the body I'm in? And that's really the thing I see. If like we're always looking outside of ourselves, it's even resources close by us, it's always going to come back to the deep journey of how do we love ourselves? How do we feel proud of who we are? How do we put ourselves in situations where we're feeling good about ourselves? It's just that the majority of people don't feel good about themselves. And that always kind of, I remind myself of that often, because that is such an important thing, that if people who do feel good about themselves can share more about how they got there, then that's the only thing we can do in this crazy world that we're living in.
Yeah, and we'll work our way up back to the real world stuff, because another thing that I did notice from your Instagram, I think you posted either yesterday or today, was that you hadn't done, was it a muscle up in 5 years? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. This like a strict muscle up where you hold the false grip, and
Yeah.
it just was like such my party trick when I would just be able to rep them out. And I went to this gym in Mount Shasta and I saw rings for the first time, because the gym I have in Denver, we don't even have rings. I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I still can do it. And I did, and it was super fun.
That's the best. Like, I feel like something like if you take such a long period of time away from doing it is just way more fun. Even if you enjoy it in the moment, just taking like a
Oh,
break of something and then doing it again is like the best.
it is. And well, it's also like, yeah, it's doing the things because you enjoy them, not because you think you should. And I think there is certain things, especially when I was in my CrossFit stage, when I was in it, I had so many reasons for doing it, but there was so much joy sucked out of it. By
Mm.
the end of it, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm more frustrated at myself than I am proud of myself. And that means that I'm in the wrong type of modality to grow as an individual. So that's when the modality had to shift. So that, yes, exactly what you said, taking time off and then coming back to it and being like, oh, this is kind of fun. I can have fun with this again. And knowing when it's not fun is only because like I'm taking it way too seriously.
Right. What was it about the CrossFit that you felt sucked the fun out of it?
Well, there's something really beautiful about finding workout routines that give you tangible outcome. So like a timer always existed with CrossFit, and you always had weight on the scale on the bar, right? Like you always had your deadlift numbers, your snatch numbers, your cleans, and then you had a time to beat all the time. So there was never how do you feel today, Emily? Maybe we should do something a little different based on how you feel. Or are your adrenals a little taxed? Or did you not sleep very well? No matter what, you showed up to the gym and it was 3, 2, 1, go. Timer, buzz, go as fast as you can, do as much as you can. And nothing in life is constantly improved, right? If we look at like the cycles of nature, there's times where you're really high and then you have to drop. Like farming is a great example, right? You can't farm year round. There's a season so that it can cover. And so for me, I personally never actually took the time off, because that's not how CrossFit works. It's not in the system, which is why I think it's a broken system. And so I not only just crashed really hard, adrenally and physically and mentally and emotionally, but when I tried to come back to it, I realized that the whole system is broken. So I was like, you know what? This is no longer for me. And I want to find ways to move that are more natural, so that I don't have to have these really, really, really good workouts and then really, really shit workouts. It all balances itself out in a way that stays enjoyable. Because overtraining is usually when you just
Become jaded.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Totally get it. I think it's important to kind of find a happy medium place. Like, obviously, do stuff that's gonna like benefit you, but like if it burns you out, then at what cost, you know? So at least try to find like the balance there. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I do want to kind of now bring it back to DC a little bit. Your season, I think maybe due to like the lack of presence really on the challenge, kind of, I don't want to say gets thrown to the wayside, but people like sort of overlook your season to a certain degree. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I only say that because I feel as if when I, not because I have reference to others, but what I feel they tried to do in DC was different than what they've tried to do elsewhere.
100.
So, right. So there was something about it where I could feel it from all the producers and everyone who was a part of it. They did want to make a little bit more of a political statement, or they wanted to be more part of social justice causes. They wanted to share the goodness of what DC is, and especially obviously Mike Manning being somebody that was such a proponent of it. And so we were put in situations like, for me, I taught poetry to a lot of beautiful, teenagers and kids, and then I worked with this Africa Action policy reform. So there was so much good that was happening, and it felt like after about a month in, they like rung it all in, and I could feel a shift where they were like, this isn't going to work. People aren't going to want to watch this. People aren't going to want to watch people doing good things. And that which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it's true. It's
it is.
unfortunate. It's true. And so there was a change in the direction, and there was a lot of pressure for just in general for us to change what we were doing, and more drinks were involved, and we started going out more, and there was like a shift. But I wasn't even aware of it until after, when I realized, oh my gosh, like what we were doing was so amazing, but they didn't even show it. We were really a part of the community and really a part of helping just bring voice to some of the things that were really important. LGBT rights was a huge one. I mean, there's just things after things after things, but that didn't get views, that didn't get action. It's not like, drama, and that's all what people want to see. So it's kind of just an interesting dynamic where it's like, okay, this is a social experiment for the participants, for the cast. It's a social experiment for the viewer to watch this happen. But ultimately, reality TV is, what is it about? It's about people watching other people really suck at life, or like, just really like be a shit show and be a hot mess.
Yeah.
Like there's something very gratifying about seeing that on TV. Like, is it because it makes us feel better? Probably, and that's okay. But it's just, if there's not enough of that, then it's not really something that's memorable. So it was an interesting thing to be a part of, and then also reflect upon.
I'll say this, you guys really do have the feel and the makings of kind of like a throwback type season, because like the originality of this genre wasn't always like that. It was basically people finding out things about each other and themselves in like a social experiment, like in an enclosed house. It's just 7 people from all different walks of life. And then I'd say from like around the time when like Real World Vegas came out was when the shift happened, when it became more about like the partying and the drama aspect. And you guys were sandwiched in between, like, I think it was you guys were season 22 or 23, I think, and then you guys were sandwiched between Cancun and New Orleans, 2 like very drama heavy seasons. So
Right.
yeah, it was, and not to mention, I didn't even mention this, Jersey Shore came out right at the same time as you guys.
Damn, yeah, I know. They tried. I guess I like give it to them for trying and like wanting to do something different and be a little bit more of a socially aware season. But yeah, I don't know if it worked.
Did you go on any of those? Because I know club appearances were a big thing at the time. Did you meet any of the Jersey Shore people on any of those by any chance?
No, I did not.
Because I know it was like you guys' seasons really like coincided with each other, so I wasn't sure.
No, yeah, I guess that's true. I forgot. Dang, Jersey Shore. Wow.
And social
Yeah, no, I
media
don't.
too. Social media had just kind of touched ground too once you guys did your season.
Yeah, no, I do remember that, because that was something that was really quite impactful, because I started sharing kind of the journey of getting back in shape and eating healthier, and just in general the discovery of my body and in a way of how to be physically healthy. And I had a lot of health issues, so like sharing that was a huge part in what propelled me into starting my first business and getting into the nutrition and fitness and wellness that I did for so long and still do to some extent.
Did you notice like the change like once you came back, like immediately? Like were you getting recognized in public a lot?
It's interesting, like where you are in the world that you get recognized. I've noticed Missouri and Texas are two very big states where like I'm like, even to this day, I'm kind of surprised when it happens. But I have, yeah, there was definitely that. Yeah,
Was
but
that
then,
weird?
uh, it's actually kind of fun because it's when people, I like when people are really upfront about it. There's people who know and they pretend they don't know, and then they're like, you look really familiar. And I'm like, just tell me you know where you know me from. Like, don't make this up for me. Just say it. And then there's some people who genuinely think that they know me. And so those are super cute because I just kind of play along with it for a while. And oh, where would you go to high school? Or where did you go to college? Or like, oh, and then if they remember it, then it's fun. But sometimes they never remember it, and I just like to play along with the story.
Have you ever told somebody like if they told you, oh, I think I know you from somewhere, think, oh no, I think you got the wrong person.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Like people's vibes are everything. Like I can pick up people's energy so fast. And so if someone comes into my field and is like, like if I just have no desire to talk to them, I'll be like, I look like a lot of people. It's just like trying to get people out. But most people, I will say, are really kind and really cute. Like, yes, oh God, this is a cute story. So I was just in Sacramento, and my cat, I travel with my cat in my van, and he got so sick, like so sick that I thought he was going to die, Mike. It was so traumatic. This is just like a week ago. And I was devastated because this cat I've had for 14 years and I just love him so much. And somebody saw on my social media that I was like very emotional about my cat, and then saw my van and came and gave me a huge hug and wanted to tell me like, I hope your cat is okay. So it was just like these moments there's usually 99% of them are really beautiful and warm, and I'm so grateful for it because it is true. It's like, you guys watched, if you've watched Real World or any of the challenges, or if you've been following me or anybody, you do build a connection with them. And it's a weird connection because you obviously don't know them, but the support is so appreciative because there's so much shit, so much critique or so much bad, that it's like when you have the special moments, you just hold on to it, and then it just makes everything worth, the icky interactions that sometimes happen.
Right. Has there ever been a period where maybe things that people say like online ever affected you emotionally from your time on the show?
Oh my God, yes. This was a really intense thing because I had a horrible experience when I was doing a challenge where I put Nutella on my face. Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was such a, I wish more than anything I could take that moment back, but I did not know what I was doing when I had that on my face. And then it turned to like, oh my God, I just participated and represented a horrible, overt racist thing that I didn't even have awareness of. So it was awful, like from every level of how terrible I felt and how much shame I felt and how regretful I was about that whole experience. And that was so intense. When that comes up, it's intense because it's something that I don't take lightly, because racism does exist and there's so much work to be done, as we know. And so having that come up and me be a part of that, it was like, I wasn't ready for that. And now I want to take radical responsibility of that I should know that this is something that is a very negative thing. Like I need to do my
Yeah.
research, relearn my history, take responsibility of that. But when it comes at a really intense from a space of real deep hurt and pain, which I understand why. It is really hard for me to be a part of. There's been many periods throughout the last 8 years or 9 years since that happened, where it'll resurface on TikTok, or it'll resurface on something, and I get attacked by the masses. And it's, they might not know the whole story. They might not know my heart. There's so many variables, so I can't even blame them for being angry. But it's just like the worst of humanity when there's disconnection and not a conversation and no conclusion. And also the fact that racism even exists, period, that this is a part of our history, is the deeper thing. So that was the heaviest, deepest, darkest. Like I've been very depressed from that years before, because it was so intense to handle and try to figure out how to navigate, and just wanting to do the right thing and make the world a better place. And I'm so sensitive that it was just like, damn, okay, this is what I signed up for, and I have to be ready for that. And I want to be able to be a voice that can help transmute this, so that we can educate people, and that I'm educated, and that we just make the world a better place through this. And that's all we can do.
Right. Like, obviously we know, like, it wasn't, the best situation, but like, I think, like, from anybody that's hearing you talk and like seeing like how you've handled the situation in the aftermath, can genuinely tell that like you feel bad about the situation, and just at the time just weren't educated in that regard, like in that subject. So like, I don't think what you did obviously was coming from like a place of genuinely you feeling that way. You just didn't know what you were doing really at the time. And now you've obviously learned the dangers of what that brings. So, and that's another thing too, like with the shows being able to like watch back now with like streaming service and like social media being so prevalent, people are like watching this and it's almost like they feel like they're watching it as it's happening like right now, like that was in 2012, so like, and it's not excusing it, but it's like you've obviously like learned from it, and you've openly spoke and how you feel terrible about that situation. So
yeah, I mean, and it's just, there's always a lesson in everything. And so what you said is so true. It's just like, oh, damn. Everyone do their research about what history actually is, because what we're taught is wrong. Just like, no matter where we're coming from, if we're in America, we have been told a different version of history than is actually true. And so it is such a beautiful thing to just, like, if that's my golden nugget of like the reason this all happened, I would do that again and again. I wouldn't ever do it again, but like I would go through that process again and again, and just be an example for it. Because yeah, as you said, there is so much to learn, or like also there's so much for me to learn, that I'm grateful for that experience. And it definitely is one of those moments where you're like, I signed up for this, the good and the bad. I'm here. I'm a part of this experience, and I get to show all of me to the world. I chose that. I said yes. So that's going to mean a lot of different things. And that was one of the directions it took for me.
Did that situation hurt more because it involved someone that you cared about, like with Ty?
Yes, and actually it even hurt more at a deeper level, because my boyfriend at the time was African American. He was
Wow.
Black. And so I was dating someone, but I couldn't even share that. It was like such an intense, his family, my best friend, Hillary, her family, like there was the people in my life are not white, that I love very dearly. So it was even more of like, of course, initially I was super defensive, because I was like, I'm not racist. And then I realized this is we all need to learn something if we are not of color, if we are not of that color. And it was just a really interesting position to be in, where it was just like I cared so much about the people in my life not being hurt, and having those really hard conversations with them, that the public, it was like, no matter what I say, I just need you, my boyfriend and my best friend, to are we okay, and of course we were okay. They didn't even blink an eye, because they know me and they love me, and it was such a but that was why it was so deep. It was deep, 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 at the deepest of deep where it was for me.
And that's a shame too, because like I feel like they mostly showed only the bad times between you and Ty, but like I can tell because I've heard you in other interviews kind of openly talk about how like you and him are like good, like you've been good, and like you know you've been around him a lot, like from filming the shows, so like you kind of I'm assuming seen a side of him that like none of the fans are seeing because we're only seeing like a condensed version of what it really is.
Yeah, Ty is wonderful. I really love Ty. I think he's super talented. He's so intelligent. He's just a really unique human. And we bonded really quickly when we first got onto the show. He was just like an instant attraction and an instant connection with him, similar to Mikey and I, that I was like, I want you on my team. You know, like I want to be friends with this person. This is a good human. And we all have our shit, but like they did, yeah. Ty, I couldn't think higher of somebody. I just think he's a genuinely wonderful person. So that experience with him, and as long as he was okay after that whole thing, I was okay, because I remember just like waking up the next morning and still not knowing what had happened and having to wake up. I had to wait for Diem to wake up to tell me, because she was the only one who would tell me what had happened. And it was just like one of those things where as soon as I understood the situation, to connect with Ty was the most important thing. And he's still a very dear friend to me today.
Mm-hmm. I almost knew, like, from watching DC too, like, you guys almost felt like a shoe-in for the challenge. Like, I was watching the episode the other day where you guys were so competitive, not only with each other, but just in general. Like, you guys were hitting, like, the boxing bag at the gym, you're doing rock climbing and stuff. It was like a shoe-in. Like, you guys were going to be on the challenge. Was that, like your intention, like, coming off of Real World? Like, you know, like, I want to hopefully, like, use this platform to now, like, catapult myself onto the challenge, or was that not even a thought for you?
Well, Mike, remember, I didn't even know what Real World was. So,
Right. Well, like after the fact, I mean, like coming
yeah,
off
after
of Real
the
World.
fact, yeah, yes. It was definitely, once you learn about it, and I had talked to the cast members about it, it was like, that is definitely something I would love to do. And I very much love doing it. So yes, a huge part of it.
Yeah, and two of your two seasons, your first one and then like the last one of the main show that you did, are like my two favorite seasons. That's like why it kind of like sticks out to me like very much in my head. Like Cutthroat and Rivals 2, like I hold very near and dear. So I remember on Cutthroat, this is funny that everybody talks about this. Everybody who I interview, there's two things that they talk about with their Cutthroat experience. The potatoes and cheese that they gave you guys in the house is like the only meals that you guys got, and that the house was most likely haunted.
Oh, it was for sure. Yeah, that was I mean, it was my first Cutthroat was my first experience ever. So I don't have like a reference. Your first one is always just like the normal.
Yeah.
And then I went to the second and third, and I was like, oh, that was not normal. We were in Prague, and like, or outside of Prague, and Czech Republic. It was a really funky house, a really weird setup. I liked the yard. They did, we had like one hot tub, but in retrospect, after going to the second and third house, I was like, I'm glad that was the first house, that I didn't have any expectations or anticipation of something better, because it was a strange environment for sure.
Was that kind of the catalyst for like taking those next steps into getting to like the hardcore, shape and like into fitness that you are in now? Was the Cutthroat experience?
Yeah, like Johnny Bananas and Derek and I and Jen, we would go out back and do these like he kept saying CrossFit circuits, and I was like, okay, like that's cool. And then afterwards, really recognizing like I could get better. Like there was challenges that were really hard for me, and I don't want them to be that hard. Like I need to feel good about myself. I want to look in the mirror and watch a show and not be in complete like disgust about myself. I was really in self-hatred mode. I was like, who am I? What did I just do? why do I look like that? Oh my God. You know, like I just spiraled. I was like a 21-year-old who just hated who I was. And then you have a moment where you decide, okay, I'm going to hate who I am, or I'm going to change it. And you get to change it. And so I decided to change it. And that was such a beautiful yes door that allowed me to realize my potential. Like, wow, I can put my mind on something. I can tackle these goals. I feel badass. I feel like a superhero. You know, like all of this like energy that I've been looking for externally. All of a sudden, I was like, damn, I did that, and I want to help other people do that too, because it took me way too long to get to this point. And that felt super important for me to just say, okay, what would I like to do in my life? I would like to inspire other people to feel like this, to feel empowered, to feel badass, to realize their potential. And personal training was such an easy way to get to that. And then it just unfolded to nutrition, and then it unfolded to more spirituality and energy, and more of the poetry and the woo. But all of it really is what makes us a whole being. So it's just been a beautiful journey to be a part of.
Well, these are important things you're talking about, because self-perception and like just self-doubt is something that's a very real thing, especially like, you know, for young people at that time, especially like people in their 20s. It's everybody in general, but like people in their 20s, it's like, you know, it's another beast, I should say.
It is. And it's like, I don't know. I actually am starting to see it more in older people than I am in younger people. And I think it's just because it manifests differently, because it manifests in older people potentially as, I'm not going to be able to change my situation. Right. So I'm just going to stay in where I'm at, in the comfortability. So there's so many people that are paralyzed by fear and doubt. And I experience it too. No matter what I do, I'm always going to hit another layer of fear and doubt. And it's never going to go away, but it is what we do with that fear. It's how we attack it, or how we approach it, or how we create space for it. Every layer in our life, like when we stop feeling fear, we've stopped living. So we just keep going through that process. But at that age, at 20 to 30, that's where it really shapes your identity at a deep level. You know, you have a decision of like caring about what other people think and changing your life to adapt to the people around you, or people that you want to care about you, or being your own individual and just being who you are and accepting who you are in all its flaws and all its weirdness, as different as it is. Because people don't want to see different. That's like really what I was always so surprised by with reality TV. Like if it's a little different, it's not wanted. You know, like it's unfamiliar to the brain, and therefore, you know, there's opinions about it that it's just like, how did you get so entitled about this? This is crazy to me. Like, it's just a person being a person, just like you. We're all people. There's no you and them. And it's like this illusion of separation is very apparent with reality TV, but I digress.
No, you hit it on the head. I just think like there's a little bit of a lack of like realism, at least like with the current state of reality TV. I just think like it's all like made out to be like everything's so perfect, you know, like what you see in like movies type of thing.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot less like people talking about like real issues about themselves and like real like, you know, self-image problems and things of that nature.
Which is like what is needed, right? Because I guess there's two approaches. So maybe it's like, on one hand, the world wants to, when you watch a TV show, or if you watch yourself in other people on TV, or in actors or actresses in movies, you know, it's like, are we trying to disconnect from our own reality? Like, are we this unhappy that we are needing to plug off and go into a different reality because we don't like our current reality?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the thing. Or are the people that you're watching, are they inspiring you or sparking something in you where you feel seen? You know, so you have those kind of two dynamics. You're either trying to disconnect, or you're trying to be seen through it or feel relatable. And if reality TV and social media and every outlet pivoted to be the relatable and the open and the vulnerable and the real, where we showed up as our fullest, shittiest self, like, and we just were able to own that and be so brave and opening in that way, the world would be much different. The world would be we would be more brave at saying who we are in love with, whether it be a girl or a boy, or we would be more brave in saying we're not happy in our relationship, or we'd be more brave in saying we're discontent with our marriage. It could be
Yeah.
as intense as that. Like, so I think what you said is so true. Like the beauty of reality TV is that it does have those moments, no matter what. There's those tiny moments. And I hope maybe this is like a hope that we lean more into, and social media and TikTok are included, to just being, it's no longer a production. Like, it's no more performance, no more production. It doesn't need to be anything else except just truth. Like, what is your truth in sharing that, or having other people share it for others, is a really beautiful thing. It can be very healing and nurturing, and you said it so well, that it can really help show the whole human spectrum.
I think we should just let you direct the I think we should let you direct things now. That was a good sales pitch.
Everyone, we're all gonna start. I'm gonna pull you all a tarot card. There might be some psilocybin involved. No, just kidding. Yeah. I'm down with it, Mike. Sign me up. Tell Mark Long. He'll do like the grandfather whatever, and I'll come in with all my like spiritual woo-woo things, and then we'll just be very balanced, and the world will be a better place.
There you go. Well, speaking of signing up for it, I'm sure, you didn't sign up for any of the Exes or Rivals themes. Did you know at the time, like, because I know, like, I hear, like, back in the day, like, there was always, like, people were making calls trying to figure out, like, who's going, who's going to be there, figuring out the theme type of thing. Did you know prior to any of that, like, that you were walking into those?
No. I never knew the theme. I think that's something they used to keep really well hidden, but you would figure out who was going to be there, and then you could try to decide, okay, well, if these are the people that are going to be there, then what does that format look like? But you never knew until you stood in front of TJ, and TJ said it on the first night that we got there. So it was always just very like, wow, here we go. But my life is fucking crazy. Okay.
Yeah, I always, you had a great performance on Cutthroat, but like I'd actually argue that like the season where like you really had like your coming out party type of thing was on X's when you went into all those eliminations. Is it what is like your season? Like, is it X's, or do you point at any of the other seasons as like the one that sticks out?
Oh yeah. No, it was Exes. It was Ty and I being really good, just being like, oh yeah, we can do this. We're a good team. We communicate well, and we're going to do everything we can. And then as soon as you realize the game, which is, it doesn't matter how good you are, we're just going to try to get rid of you, which I guess is the game. My athletic performance brain, which like based the whole challenge off of athletic performance, like if you are able to perform athletically, you will succeed. And then there's the people who can't perform athletically, so they all of a sudden that's not what it is. So I was just like, what is this? So naive, like, shocked about this. You're gonna throw us in again? Like, of course they're trying to get rid of us, Emily. This is how this shit works. So I think through that process of like, oh, we're gonna get thrown in, and I'm going to be pissed about it, and I'm going to have all this energy to come back and be even better. It built up this like, oh, I can play this game, no matter what, whether I'm strategically inept or athletically superior, it does not matter. Like, I'm here to play, and I want to be here. And it really switched, where the first show I was like a deer in headlights. Like, I didn't even know what was going on. And then the third being like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta win this. Like, it's now or never. I'm gonna win it, or I'm never gonna win a challenge, and it's gonna become one of those like never win curses that happen.
Yeah, and it was you and CT both on that show that you won, where you both finally got your win, which I thought was cool. Rivals 2. I think that's why Rivals 2 sticks out as like such like a beloved season, is because like two players such as yourself that everybody like kind of was like, oh, we really need them to get that win, like, and then you finally got it. But we talked about kind of with the gameplay and like being thrown into eliminations. I feel like Rivals too, almost from day one, was like a certainty. You and Paula, like as soon as I saw that pairing, I was like, okay, might
I
as well
know.
hand him the trophy now.
I love Paula so much. I love her.
Where were you two on the rival scale heading into it, like from 1 to 10? Like one being like we're best friends to like 10 being rivals.
We were like a 2,
Okay.
and then so it was kind of a shock to us both. And then we didn't even care because we were like, this is just such a win for all of us. But by the end of it, we're like very much best friends. It was so great.
It's also crazy how both of you sort of had like different paths after that show, but similar in the fact that like you both win and then like go and like live your lives, but like both become like a more zen version of yourself. Like
Uh,
congratulations to her. She's actually, I believe, I want to say almost a decade sober. So
I know,
yeah,
and crushing her job. She's an amazing athlete. You can see her yoga videos. She's just so dialed in, and then she's the best mom. I can only imagine how much fun they have. It's just like the cutest, sweetest. Yeah, I'm super proud of her. She did not have an easy go in anything, and it was amplified by reality TV, right? So
yeah.
it's not easy to do what she did, and I'm so grateful that I was a part of that in some small way.
Did you know after Rivals 2 that that was going to be your last season, like the main show?
No, because I think all of these veterans, they said it would be their last one, and they never actually would let it be their last one. So no, you just don't believe that when you hear that.
It was just life then, basically.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you did come back and do Champs versus Stars, and you were there for another one of CT's iconic moments, which involved Terrell Owens. What was where you were there? So, like, what was that whole situation like with him towards you guys? Like that animosity? Like he was just seemed to have like some agenda against your guys' team.
To
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I still think about it to this day. When I was watching the Super Bowl, I was with a bunch of people in Mexico, and I was like, somebody was like, nobody's as good as T.O. And I was like, you know what? T.O.'s a fucking asshole. I just need you to know. I just need to tell you this. And I mean, obviously, there's like, we all have our shit. And I love T.O. at before, like as a fan
Yeah.
of athletic people. And there were so many amazing things. You would just watch him. Like we would all be ready for Champs versus Stars, and it was before the first challenge that we did, where we like had to pull a semi,
Hmm.
and he was just standing there, and he's such a like everything about him, his build, the way he walks, it's just a whole vibe. He's like, and those really tall like filmmaker chairs or like
Yeah.
director
Yeah.
chair. Okay, so he was on the back of it. So imagine how tall that is, where it's kind of like, I guess like to his chest or to your, about at least your chest. He was on the back side of it, Mike. And without even taking a step, he jumped over the entire thing onto the other side of it and sat down.
Wow.
It was, I was just like as someone who just is obsessed with athletic people and like sports performance and always trying to be a better athlete in my way, when you see that raw athleticism, you can't not be in awe. So I'm just so impressed by him and what he can do. But also imagine growing up with that much athletic potential and like your whole life changing for it, and then it becoming, I mean, I can only imagine the shit that he has going on and how he was raised as his shit. But like, he's not a good person. He's not a nice person. I remember the very specific time where I was like, holy shit, T.O. is out to get me. There was something like, I can do this with very competitive men. Like I can trigger them sometimes,
Hmm.
because I'm a competitive person and I don't back down. So even in college, like I would get like, guys would try to get in bar fights with me, and it was a really weird thing that would happen. So this started happening with T.O., and we were at a parkour event, and I think it's just because I wouldn't take shit from him. And his job was to just throw dodgeballs as much as he can so that he can get me out. And my goal was to beat Johnny Bananas and how many parkour flags he had gotten. So I'm just like ready and focused. And the force and I caught eyes with T.O. as he's throwing this dodgeball. I had full fear, and every ounce of my body was just terrified. Like, this guy is going to try to kill me. This is so, just the look and the intensity. And so that was the night, that the parkour days when we came back. And there was just a lot of this energy that, like, he was just in a bad mood and he didn't. And so when CT went at it, we were all kind of grateful because that energy was in the room, and T.O. was being really hard to work with and talk with, and also like just such a dick for no reason. And he's just T.O. And so in a way we were all stoked about it because like he was saying these things and it was like breaking the tension. Like we needed it. And yeah, that was such a moment.
Yeah, how's that for a last challenge experience for you?
I know, right? I feel like it left a lot to be desired, truthfully, but that's okay. I raised a lot of money for Girls Inc., and that was such a beautiful organization. I came back to Denver, started working with the girls in the organization. It's a nonprofit for girls ages 8 to 18, and it was just like this full circle moment of like, damn, I got to give back and I got to make the world a better place. So to me, that was worth it. But I also, as far as the competitor in me, it was kind of like, yeah. Like, okay, I guess we play dodgeball and parkour, but I like pushing myself and understanding like the newness of the challenges are what makes me feel like I'm like learning and growing. And so, yeah, there was some left to be desired.
Do you still have the itch?
Always.
Okay. Well, there you go, people, for those.
I don't think it could go away. I don't think it'll ever go away.
I read that you and Johnny were almost partners on this past season of the main series. Was that true?
Yeah, there's like, there's a lot of potential partners and a lot of potential matchups that it's all kind of a blur until what happens. But yeah, there was definitely like a moment in time where I was really stoked about potentially having Johnny as a partner.
There you go. So it's not, completely off the table then. It's just kind of the stars have to align type of thing.
That is such a perfect way. I would have said the exact thing. The stars have to align, and then it's a yes.
Mm-hmm. So in closing here, could you talk to me a little bit about maybe what you might have going on the rest of the year that you're looking forward to, that you'd like to talk about?
What a great question. Yes. So I've been in this van 7 months. So I'm living in a van, and it's been so fun. Like, there's no greater adventure than to live in a van. I think everyone should do it for even a month or two. It's so cool. Yeah, it's just like, so I've been to all over the country, and then I went to Mexico, and then now I'm going to Canada, and I'm going to go learn how to kite surf. So that's my new
fun. Kite surf?
Yes. Do you know kite surfing?
I think I've seen, yeah. Okay. That rings a bell.
Yeah, so it's like a kind of a snowboard, but on the water, so more like a wakeboard. And then you have a giant kite, like a huge kite, like it can be anywhere from 7 meters to 15 meters. And you use that to control yourself on the board. And you surf basically with a kite powered with the wind. So that's been super exciting to do. I've done a couple lessons, and now I'm going to go up to Squamish, Canada, and do it more seriously, which is super fun. And yeah, I think my hope and my kind of work as as a human is like, how do I make the world a better place? How do I help people with where they're at? And what does that mean? And so I've created so many fun, easy, plug and play support that's just like, here's a personality test called the Bird Quiz, and here's a free, guide to how to eat and a meal plan and learn about blood sugar. And, there's like lots of things that I sell on my website and I offer for free. But what I care about the most is really understanding micronutrients. And so when we look at our cells and our body and our health, we all are deficient in something because our soil is deficient in everything. And so now I'm fascinated with obviously teaching people what supplements they need so that they feel strong and vital and healthy. But the real problem is farming and really understanding the ecosystem that is struggling right now with water shortage and issues of distribution, and also soil degradation and soil health is why we ourselves are not healthy and have toxins and chemicals and cancer. So I am just on a mission to learn about this as much as I can and podcast about it and share about it and really help people realize their food is so important, and also how it's grown and where it's grown, and also learning about our farming systems and our global systems is just so important for us to do. We have to do it because it's the most empowering thing we can do. And that's what I'm really excited about for this year, is digging into that rabbit hole.
Wow. So you've got a lot going on then. That sounds like quite the adventure.
It's so important though, it's just so important. It's easy to be detached from our food or what we drink or what we eat, but like, I don't know. I think everyone should grow their own food and learn about food and how to really be, in a couple years, COVID was a small example of what can happen when we are completely, at the expense of systems that are really not in the highest good of the individual. So just learning about that and making sure that we are responsible as like, okay, my meat can come from this farm and my food can come from this place. It sounds crazy and foreign to some people, but it's a beautiful thing to start to understand where your food comes from and how it's processed and how much work it takes to get to your plate, because we need to know those things, because if COVID happened again or there was a supply chain issue, we really would be screwed. We'd really be screwed. And then it's up to us to take advantage of the time we have to learn about it and get to know the people in our area that could provide that food. And yeah, I'm just really, really, really excited about where that path is leading me.
Mm-hmm. What do you use for your podcast to record?
Zoom.
Oh man.
But why I do Zoom is because there's a way that it maybe Skype does this too, but it records your audio and my audio separately.
Okay.
And that sometimes is helpful. I don't actually ever, like, if I needed to stitch something out, instead of it just having one big file, like if my recording got really glitchy, you would be able to have it. So I like the separate files that it creates.
Okay, that's smart. I used to do that a couple years ago with the same thing, but now like I think that was because I used to use my phone, so now I use like my computer and like the audio is like better and stuff on the computer.
Yeah, I agree. Skype audio is much better, so you're doing it right.
Okay, thank you. With you, this was great to kind of talk about some serious subjects and then also talk about some fun ones too. So I wish you luck with everything you've got going on, and hope you had as much fun as I did.
I did, Mike. Thank you for the wonderful conversation.
For sure. All right, have a great rest of your night.
Bye.
Bye.